Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
The World According to Elmer is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Crooked River Radio is an internet radio station that is live 24/7 playing rock and adult contemporary top 40 hits from the 60s through the 90s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden, and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River. Welcome aboard. We're headed for the world according to Elmer, with hosts Jerry Sorensen and Pat Morrow. Don't worry, you'll enjoy it there. Better buckle in and enjoy the ride. Here come our hosts now.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the World According to Elmer. I am Jerry Sorensen, your host, KG8RRY, and with us tonight, your other host, our Elmer, Mr. Pat Morrow, N80, quiet please, N80 QP. Pat, how are you, and how has your week been?
Busy, really busy, extremely busy. Considering at 1:30 Monday morning, we had a tornado warning up here, and
we did, and not only up there, Pat, down here as well. In fact, that's how I was awakened at 1:30 in the morning to the sirens going off.
I was the way this transpired. I was just getting ready to hit the rack, and it was about quarter 12, something like that. I went up, went to bed. Was just starting to really get snuggled in, you know. All of a sudden, I see on the TV on the TV there was a severe thunderstorm warning for Summit until 1:30. So I begrudgingly pulled myself out of bed, thinking it ain't gonna be nothing. I looked at the radar before I went to bed. There wasn't nothing there. Well, I got back down here. And that radar had grown enormously. You know, the image on the radar.
Things had changed.
There was a very pronounced line there. And it followed through and got to about 20 after 1. And I'm watching the radar, and the bottom of the line that was going through Summit County was pretty much just about dissipated. And then within 3 frames between about 120, 125, somewhere in there, and 135, you could not believe the way that radar came back. It was like in 2 or 3 scans, it went from nothing to where they ended up issuing a warning for it, and it was a tornado.
Yeah, warning. Did you ever see the movie Alien? They had those things. The aliens, the thing that attached on the front of people's heads and whatnot. Anyway, those things would be up above the ceiling, and they had this radar where they could look for the aliens, and all of a sudden, all you would see are these big cloudy areas as they were closing in on you, and it would go from having nothing on there till all of a sudden you realized you were going to die because these things were everywhere. That sounds like your weather radar on Sunday morning.
Yeah, it was about it. I'm giving a talk tomorrow evening at my club on severe weather and Skywarn and that. We hadn't done one in about 3 years, and we're about
now.
Due.
This is the talk. I might understand that it's on. It's going to be on Zoom. Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to be on Zoom. We're going to do.
You'll have to give us that information because I'd like to sit in on that one and watch from down here if you'll be so kind.
Yeah, it's go to cfarc.org. And there will be go to the calendar and you'll see the Zoom meeting for Skywarn. I think it says the Skywarn activity meeting. And you just
all of our regular listeners will know. There perhaps are some who have joined us tonight or will join in the future that don't know. Pat is the head of Skywarn in Summit County, Ohio. He is also the president of the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club. So when he says CFARC, that is CFARC.org. That is their club website. And so if you'd like to sit in on weather training tomorrow night, this would be a good time to do that.
It's going to be it'll be about an hour presentation once we get it started. And It'll go probably to about 8:30, quarter to 9. I'm thinking.
So the
That's
bonus
Eastern
is
time,
we'll get to see your smiling face.
and we'll be. I'm going to make it interesting. I've done these talks several times before. There's always stuff that you got to concentrate on. The stuff that I want to concentrate on is not on this time is what reports need to be given and the way of collecting the data for it. And
Okay.
then on top of that, just general safety, how to know what's coming. I've got a couple of websites. My sumsky.org, sumsky.org, has all been revamped, and it's probably one of the best weather tools for Summit County you'd
That
ever
is an
want to use.
extremely useful website. I'd like to commend you on that website, Pat. Outstanding job.
That was an actual 20 years of collecting and design. There was a guy by the name of Kenny Dorsey, who was K8OAD. You might recognize that call sign. He was the one that actually designed it for me, and it was in PHP. And I lost, as I've done 3 or 4 different times in my lifetime, I lost track of him. And I ended
Yes.
up having to take it over and do it myself. Well, I used most of the stuff that was in his original design. Plus, I added some. So that's pretty much
Well, it's an outstanding weather tool. There's nothing in this area weather-wise that you cannot find on that site. That's an outstanding site, Pat.
Yeah, there's actually 2 or 3 different ways of getting trackable radar. And it's kind of neat. That's why I designed it for the spotter, and that's what it's there for.
I don't think the general public understand, by and large, some of the tools that are available to check upcoming weather. But trust me when I tell you that the Weather Service has access to tools that we don't understand and we don't use. They've gotten pretty good at predicting weather now, as compared to like the 1960s. I had a number of friends when I was in radio with the network that went into news, and specifically they went into television news to be weathermen. And back in those days, I remember talking to a very young Dick Goddard who had left radio and he had gone into television. And I asked him one day when he and I were talking on a commercial matter, I asked him what predicting the weather in front of the whole world, in essence, because you're out there on the TV and everybody remembers what you said. I asked him what that was like, and he goes, Jerry, he said, it's a crapshoot. He said, we make our best guess, and then you have to go with it. And you either look like a hero or you look like a goat at the end of the day.
Somebody here a couple of years ago told me that in order to predict the amount of snowfall for a certain area, it's almost as easy as taking a needle and throwing it out the door of the International Space Station and predicting where that's going to land within 25 feet.
Yeah.
And ever since
There
I
you
was
go.
told that, that's pretty much that's a great synopsis of that. 'Cause that's about what
Never
it's like.
quite know, do you? I mean, that's why they'll say, like 2 to 4 or 2 to 6 or whatever, because, and it is kind of interesting. Have you ever been driving down the interstate, Pat, and you're completely dry, and all of a sudden, a moment later, you're in a torrential thunderstorm?
Yep.
Well, you don't think about the fact that rain, you still have to start somewhere and stop somewhere, do you?
That's about it. You just think it just brushes right on over, and it's going to
Yeah,
cover.
well, you just think it's this gradual process, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not.
Until you really look at a radar and distinguish where it's raining and that, then you realize how small and intricate or how huge some of this stuff can be. You have
Seems to
the
be
aerial.
hit and miss sometimes.
Yeah, you have the area-wide stuff that'll cover pretty much the whole state. But some, at least as far as the thunderstorms and that are concerned, you get these little popcorn cells, and they'll dump a ton of water, and they won't move, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And there could be 150, 200 of them across the radar screen like that. I mean, they're just maybe 1,500, maybe 2,000 feet in a round or in any shape, and that's where it's raining, and anything outside of there, it's not.
There you go.
Uh,
What time is this talk tomorrow night? Now, this will be Eastern time, folks. What time?
7:30 p.m.
7:30 p.m. Put it on your calendar. Go to cfarc.org and get registered to have Pat talk about the weather tomorrow night. It's all good. We got some of I got some of these cards this week. I picked this one out. This one I picked specifically for you because if you look at the millihertz, if you look at the band this was on, this is a 6 meter, Pat.
Oh, cool.
QSL card.
Hang on just a second.
You told me.
We're going to go dark here for a second because I got to turn this on so we can go close up on that. It'll
close up.
Take me a second here. There. That's better.
Oh my, look at that. You can actually read the thing now. That is a 6 meter QSL.
Sweet.
You remember the other day when 6 meters was open, I was out there on an AM net, and the guy that runs the net came on and he said, "Hey, 6 meters has an opening. Let's just go out and see who we can find to talk to." And I met up with WA1 PAC from over in Groton, Mass. And at any rate, he was on his Elecraft K3 and a Yagi, and he had the Yagi pointed to the west, and of course, right at Massillon, Ohio. So we had a chance to talk. We talked for about 20 minutes, which was a nice rag chew. And this particular call was on 35 watts I used from Massillon, Ohio, on a 9 foot, a little bit under 9 foot, 6 meter dipole. So this was a very nice call, Pat.
Not bad at all.
It is the Magic Band, and it's not often open, but when it is open, it is open.
Yep.
Hey, have you got those slides that I sent you today, Pat? I've got a couple more of these cards on those slides.
No, I didn't get the slides. I
You didn't get the slides?
I just said that.
Oh, there's the slides. You're pulling my leg, Pat. Hey, look at this call. This was over to Janesville, Rock County, Wisconsin, out there in Dairyland, K9DBV. Terry Thompson is the head of the Hams for Christ Network, and he's also an Ole Miss guy. He is a retired U.S. Navy guy. Lots of retired U.S. Navy guys in ham radio. Have you ever noticed that?
Yep, comes with the territory, I guess.
This next one down here, he came from New Bern, North Carolina, K4NGR. And this is an EQSL that he sent me. I'm going to show you another EQSL in just a second. But this fella here, this was a CW call that he and I had on the 24th of July. And we were on 40 meters and had a real good connection between North Carolina and Ohio. This next card, wouldn't it be a shame if all of your stuff came in as EQSLs as opposed to regular QSL cards? This is the EQSL card for WM3 pin. Now, you recognize that call sign, guys? Of course. That is one of the call signs for, that is the call sign for one of the 13 colony stations.
Oh, sweet.
WM3 pin. And that's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So what do you want? Do you want that beautiful paper card that comes in the mail, or do you want this thing?
I'd take the paper card any day of the week.
Yeah, thank you. The one that has the beautiful picture on the front of it. And this is what you get when you get an EQSL. They're not the same thing. Trust me. This next one down, though, is a paper QSL card. And this is not only the card, Pat, but this is the envelope that he put it in. I wanted you to see both. This is another station over there in Mass in Walpole, but this is November 1 Mike X-Ray, and Michael is his name. And I want you to look at that envelope. That's exactly how it came. Look at how he did KG8RRY in the big red and black letters. And then if you look over on the left top, that's his stamp that he puts on all the envelopes when he sends his QSL cards out. So that gets Ornate Card of the Year award right there.
Sweet.
That is it. Did you get your new QSL, or excuse me, your new QST in the mail from the ARRL, Pat?
Nope.
Nope. Well, here's what it looks like. This is the magazine. It's got the umbrella on the front of it, And the
Oh,
thing
crap.
here, oh, we're going to get to that
Hang
here in a
on.
second. That's our
Hang on.
video.
Hit
We're
the
going to be
wrong
talking
button.
about propagation, guys. So hang in there. I'm almost done with this part of it. Got to get switched back over here. But the QST magazine came in, and check out the picture on the front. It's this guy. This is his. They what do they call it? A combrella. This now you look. He's got a 2 meter on that umbrella, Pat. Can you see that?
I see that. You can lower it just a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Well, now you can build your combrella because you have the plans
You
here.
know,
when
when
you
I
get your
looked at that the
magazine.
first time, I thought that really isn't that much of an off the wall thing, especially for
Why
2 meters
not?
and
I think it's
440.
pretty off the wall, Pat.
Because of the fact that you probably in that umbrella thing, you've got the radials there that hold that fabric out. Those could be used as radials.
Oh, you know what? You saw this because you said that. You said the spine inside
Yeah,
the
the
umbrella or
spine
whatever could be
inside
used.
that could be used as, and that would be
Isn't that
that'd be a
great?
decent ground plane.
I would think so. It would be with the way it is. I guess it's a capacitance hat, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there you go. And make sure you look on page 94. I'm checking. This is page 94. A fellow by the name of Jim Brown, who is November Juliet 3 Bravo. He's a member of our Swanham Radio Club, and a most amazing thing happened to him, Pat. He had a novice rig. This Swan here was his novice rig. This particular radio, a Swan 350, and he had sold it and always regretted making the sale. When he had an opportunity later in life, he saw an ad for a 350 for sale, and guess what? He bought his radio back again.
Sweet.
Yeah, isn't that a great story? So you want to make sure you read in the upcoming or the magazine that's out now, the QST. Look on page 94 and you'll see Jim's article. Jim is a weekly listener to The World According to Elmer. This is The World According to Elmer, if you're just joining us. Here's what we're going to talk about first tonight. We've got two things to talk about tonight. One is the positioning or the status of your antenna. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The other is, have you seen this? Have you seen this box on various websites? This is the solar data that affects propagation. Now, what is propagation? Propagation is the thing that determines whether or not a band is open or a band is closed and how usable that band is. It's something that we don't control. Mother Nature controls propagation. But when you see this, now most of us can look over without too much training on the right side, and we can say, okay, well, I see that 80 meters and 40 meters today, during the daytime, 80 to 40 is only fair. But this evening, it should be good. After the switchover, after the gray line, when the atmosphere changes. And there's 20 and 30, they're both good. 17 and 15 are fair today, and 12 and 10, no big surprise there. They're poor. But this gives you the relative signal noise level. It gives you the maximum usable frequency, which is the MUF, or the MUF. The SFI is important to the far left, as is the K-index and the A-index. These are all things that you could use to determine how well you're going to do on the bands tonight. Then you've got your VHF conditions in the center. You can see the bands that are closed. You can see to what extent 6 and 4 are open. And you can see that Earth, Moon, and Earth is in poor condition tonight. All these things you can pick up, but do you really know what you're looking for? And when you see the K-index over there, and you see that it's a 1, what does that mean? These are valid questions, and this is something we're going to talk about on tonight's show. What does this thing mean, and how can I use this to make me a more successful ham radio operator? How does that picture of the sun there and all the data over to the left, the solar terrestrial data, how does this impact my station and the calls that I'm going to try to make tonight? That's what we're going to learn about right now. So, Mr. Pat, if you have that video that we started a moment ago, let's go ahead and roll this thing. And we have a gentleman that is going to explain to us how we can read these charts and how we can be better ham radio operators, and we can have more success at our ham radio stations because of it. This is The World According to Elmer on Crooked River Radio Network.
Solar Cycle 25 is now showing signs of life. What happens on our Sun affects radio propagation around the world. Solar indices are a measure of activity on the Sun. These indices can be used by amateur radio operators to get a sense of how radio signals will propagate globally and when to expect a radio blackout. Sites like Solar Ham give a good insight into the Sun's current activity, presenting easy-to-consume solar weather. But what does it all mean? What's good for radio? And what's not? Our Sun is a huge ball of electrically charged hot gas. This hot gas moves, generating a powerful magnetic field. The Sun's magnetic field goes through a cycle called the solar cycle. Every 11 years or so, the Sun's magnetic field completely flips. This means the Sun's north and south poles switch places. Giant eruptions on the Sun, such as solar flares and coronal mass ejections, also increase during the solar cycle. These eruptions send powerful bursts of energy and material into space. This activity can have effects on Earth. For example, eruptions can cause lights in the sky called aurora, or impact radio communications. Extreme eruptions can even affect electricity grids. In this video, we'll take a quick look at how the Sun affects our hobby of amateur radio. The Earth is blanketed by a protective region of space called the magnetosphere, which is dominated by a powerful magnetic field. It's our planet's shield in space. The measurements from many space missions have been combined to reveal the Earth's magnetosphere is blown out by the solar wind into a teardrop shape. The head of the teardrop extends only about 65,000 kilometres towards the Sun. The tail of the drop stretches away in the direction opposite the Sun, actually reaching beyond the Moon's orbit. This long magneto tail extends more than 600,000 kilometres from Earth. When solar wind is directed towards Earth, this magnetic field acts as a shield. Some of the wind's particles pass through the magnetic field into the ionosphere, a layer of upper atmosphere that begins about 90 kilometres above the Earth's surface. Trapped in the ionosphere, the particles head towards the poles, producing colourful auroral glows. When the solar wind mixes with the ionosphere, it becomes super-ionised, causing destructive rather than productive interference. The turbulence interferes with radio transmissions. In some instances, broadcasts can be picked up hundreds or thousands of kilometres from the transmitter. In others, signals cancel each other out, creating areas where reception is poor. One of the key skills for any DXer is to know how to judge what band conditions may be like.
Damien, I've got 25 and 151 as well, and I time in Burnie too. So good to make the contact with you for the first time there, Damien. I'll put it back to you. VK3EJ with the group, VK7JON.
To be able to gain an idea about conditions, three main indices are used: solar flux and the AP and KP indices. A measure known as solar flux is used as the basic indicator of solar activity and to determine the level of radiation being received from the sun. The higher the solar flux, the better for amateur radio. The solar flux is measured in solar flux units and is the amount of radio noise or flux that is emitted at a frequency of 2800 MHz. The solar flux is closely related to the amount of ionisation and hence the electron concentration in the F2 region. As a result, it gives a very good indication of conditions for long-distance communication.
How's everything down there in Victoria? Coming through quite nicely on 6 today.
The figure for solar flux can vary from as low as 50 or so to as high as 300. Low values indicate the maximum usable frequency will be low, and overall HF communications will not be very good. Conversely, high values generally indicate there is sufficient ionisation to support long-distance communications at higher than normal frequencies. Typically, values in excess of 200 will be measured during the peak of a sunspot cycle, with high values of up to 300 being experienced for shorter periods. There are two indices that are used to determine the level of geomagnetic activity: the A index and the K index. These indices give indications of the severity of the magnetic fluctuations and hence disturbances to the ionosphere. The first of the two indices used to measure geomagnetic activity is the K index. The K index quantifies disturbances in the horizontal component of the Earth's magnetic field, with an integer in the range of 0 to 9, with 1 being calm and 5 being more indicative of a geomagnetic storm. The K index is a quasi-logarithmic number and as such cannot be averaged to give a long-term view of the state of the Earth's magnetic field. So the A index was created, which gives a daily average. During very severe geomagnetic storms, the A index can reach values of up to 200 and very occasionally more. The A index reading varies from one observatory to the next, since magnetic disturbances can't be local. To overcome this, the indices are averaged from Northern Hemisphere monitoring stations and Southern Hemisphere monitoring stations to provide the AP index, or the planetary value. Similarly, the KP index is the planetary average of all the K indices at observatories around the world. So, the lower the KP index, the better for amateur radio. To conclude, generally, the higher the flux, the better the conditions will be for the higher HF frequencies and even 6 metres. However, the levels need to be maintained for some days. In this way, the overall level of the ionisation in the F2 layer will build up. Typically, values of 150 and more will ensure good HF band conditions, although levels of 200 and more will ensure they are at their peak. The level of geomagnetic activity has an adverse effect, lowering the maximum usable frequencies. The higher the level of activity, as reflected in the AP and KP indices, the greater the depression of the maximum usable frequencies. The actual amount of depression will depend not only on the severity of the storm, but also its duration. For best conditions, the solar flux should remain above 150 for a few days, with the K index below 2. When these conditions have been met, check out the bands and expect some good DX to be about.
That was the coolest ending to a video I have ever seen in my life. I don't know what that was at the end, but that was awesome. Well, are you all primed up and ready to tackle the solar index?
Well,
what's that?
According to them, right now the A is at 7, the K is 1, so it's going to be
yes,
it's going to end up being quiet. But
and the solar flux index is at 99 right now.
Yep, exactly. And I never really put 2 and 2 together there. And so right now it sounds like conditions really aren't that great yet.
They're not all that good from the standpoint that we're at the bottom of the moderate area or the middle area as far as the solar flux index is concerned. So not a lot of horsepower there. But at the same time, with a K index of 1, that means the band conditions are quiet. So there is an opportunity tonight that you can make some contacts, but it's not really, they're not ideal conditions right now. And I have to tell you, Pat, I haven't seen an SFI of over 150 in months now.
I haven't either.
Almost every day it's down around 100, so right in that area. And in fact, I've seen it under 100 in the last 30 days.
I haven't seen anything, even in the best of times. I think I've only seen it as high as a couple of hundred. I don't really.
Did you ever see an SFI of 300 since you've been doing ham radio?
No, I don't. Not that I remember. And
yet, that's what if you're to believe this, what he's saying, that's where you really want the SFI to be. You want something up in the 300 area, and that if that happens, that's going to be later the solar cycle because we're not anywhere close to that now.
No,
it just doesn't vary that much from day to day. I mean, you see some up and some down, but you're not going to see a 300 pop up. Not going to happen. So this is just another tool, guys. And the other thing is, don't be discouraged. Like tonight, where it says that the SFI is iffy, not really that great, but not horrible either. Get out there on the bands and see what it's like for yourself. This is one tool. This is not the end all. So, you have to combine this kind of knowledge with all the other knowledge that you have, including your sense of how propagation is based upon your past experience. So all these things factor in. I think, Pat, is... Go ahead.
The only way you're going to find out is to get on the bands and try it yourself.
I think so. It's like you told me in the very beginning. You said, don't be afraid to get out there. I mean, it's like if a person tells you, well, Jerry, don't waste your time going to 10 meters because it's closed. Well, unless you take a trip there every so often and check it out for yourself, how do you know? Are you going to base your activity based upon what another ham says?
Yep.
You have it within your power to reach over and move the radio to 10 meters and see what's on there. I suspect that a number of these bands are open more often than we think they are. It was like the night that we were on 6 meters and made all those contacts. We happened to be there anyway, or I was there anyway, because I was anticipating a net. So I was on 6 meters when the opening occurred. How many other times, because I'm just out of the habit of going to 6 meters now, how many other times is that band open and I never know it because I don't go there anymore? It's like saying the bands are closed, but you never throw your call sign out.
If you follow that celestial data during the afternoons, you'll see they'll start predicting what's open and what's not. And a lot of times you'll see 6 meter band openings that normally you would know about. So that little tool, I don't know if they made it an app now or what. It used to be a widget for your computer. That little widget's a really good piece of equipment. It's a really good tool to have for anything if you're wanting to talk to bands.
Well, now this leads to another question, and this was the one I wrote down for you tonight when I looked at that video today, which, by the way, came to me from a listener, and so we appreciate that. But at any rate, when I'm looking outside and I'm doing my weather watching every day, what weather conditions can I look for outside that might be indicative that we might have a band opening let's like for instance, the guy on the video was running 2 meter sideband, which I enjoy doing. But whether you're on 2 or whether you're on 6, what kind of weather conditions can we see outside? Not solar weather, but weather. You know, that might lead us to believe there might be an opening on 6 or 2.
Well, anytime you're going to get a large front come through, you've always got the possibility of ducting. You know, if you've got a long cold front, there's always a good possibility you're going to duct from that. And the ducting could get you from Ohio to Texas. The other thing, and this is a big thing that really nobody pays much attention to, but I do, and that's if when you're watching the radar or watching your local Andre Bernier or Jeff Tanch,
good man,
and they show the radar on there, if it's got a big old glob where it's originating at, the chances are your 2 meter and 440 frequencies are going to be active.
Well, now wait, whoa. Let's back up
because
to what you just said there. Okay, so I'm watching the weather radar. Let's say Andre's on, so I'm on the channel 8, whatever, and I'm looking at his radar. What am I looking for again?
If you see the actual name for this stuff is anomalous propagation.
Okay.
And what that is, it's radar. The radar is bouncing back on stuff locally that is the magnetic waves and what have you, and it means the bands are open.
Wow.
You'll see this a lot if you get up and watch the morning radars a lot, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning during the summer. You'll see a lot of this stuff. And what that means is you're going to hear stations from, I don't know, down to the Ohio border. You're going to hear Detroit coming in, and you know none of this is completely impossible. What that means on 2 meters is that the band's open, and you're going to travel quite a ways.
This is a phenomenon actually that used to happen when I was in broadcasting. At AM radio
exactly
stations are subject to this, and we would be I'd be listening along, and all of a sudden Houston, Texas would be right there, right next to our station, and it's like, wow, where did this station come from? And it was arriving because of tropospheric ducting. That's a station that never ordinarily would have ever been heard in Kansas, but there they were, and that was the reason. They found an opening. Nature found an opening and transplanted that signal right in our area.
The AP,
so it is incredible.
The AP, or anomalous propagation, is why the FCC at one point made you reduce your power at night or certain times of the day. There's a lot of high power at night stations that have to drop their power during the day because of AP, because they don't want to broadcast it all over the country.
They travel all kinds of distance.
Yep, that's exactly what
AM broadcast band is a medium wave band, and it is capable of tremendous distances.
Exactly. I used to listen to some of the Canada stuff, CKLW up in Canada, I think it was.
Yeah. North of Detroit.
I used to get I used to hear a lot of that. There's a couple other ones in Detroit that I used to listen to quite a bit. You know, your megawatt stations too. You take something like WTAM. You know, they're 50,000 watts, and they brag that they hit 32 states and 42 states and half of Canada.
Which they do.
And that wouldn't surprise me with that kind of power.
I used to sit in Florida and listen to WTAM when it was 3WE back in the day.
Yep.
And I also used to sit on the beach in Florida down at Clearwater Beach and listen to 1220 WGAR, which was top 40 at the time. This was back in about 1977. And the signal was fantastic. And even today, all ham radio operators in Ohio know that Ohio and Florida are joined to the hip. I can get on any night of the week here in Massillon, Ohio, and I can talk to pretty much anybody in Florida. Everybody in Florida is a good distance for me. So there's a good, strong tie-in. And as you get to know your station, you'll figure out which states that you easily reach and which states are challenged for you. and it's different for every station. Pat's station will have different states he can reach than my station here. It's just the nature of the beast. And then when you throw this in, and all of a sudden now changing weather and changing space weather, all of this affects propagation. You understand why when somebody says, well, if you can hear that station, they can hear you. That's not true, guys. And I don't know why we tell young hands that, because whether one station can hear another station, yes, you have control of part of that, but part of that is propagation, and there's no cheating Mother Nature. She will do as she wills in this matter.
And your signal going out might be bouncing somewhere else than back to that original point.
You bet. You don't know what that line of propagation is, so it's not all a crapshoot. You've got control over some things, but some things are simply out of our control, and that is what makes radio great, because it's magic.
Yeah.
The other thing these two videos tonight go together, because the other thing we have talked about many times, Pat has pointed out ad nauseum, that the most important component of your station is your antenna. And yet, as I have pointed out, statistics, including my friends at a certain manufacturer's company in Talmadge, tell me people spend 90% of their money on their station on their radio. And then they buy their antenna and their coax and everything else with scraps that are left over after they bought their radio. And then they wonder why their station won't perform. But what about different kinds of antennas? Pat has told us that you can reach anywhere in the world, guys, on 100 watts in the wire. 100 watts in the wire, you're set up, you're good to go. But what kind of wire? To just say a wire, there's a wide variety of different types of wires.
Yep.
Here at my home, I was talking about my 6-meter dipole. That's a horizontal wire, and it's a traditional dipole. But my DX Commander 1080 vertical is also a wire. It's a vertical wire, tuned to resonance, top to bottom. Two totally different types of antennas, two totally different wires, two totally different results if I switch from one to another. So we've got a video tonight, Pat, that I think is real worthwhile. And this fella tries some different types of wires, and he checks his pattern. And so it's fascinating. Let's watch this thing, and then you and I can come back on the other side and talk about it.
Let me let you in on a secret before we go.
Go.
If you have a fiberglass antenna, what do you think's on the inside of that? We'll answer that after we watch this.
And I really hope that all of those hand gestures help make some sense of all of this mess. Stick around. Okay, so what we have here is the end-fed half-wave setup Nevis style. This is in an east-west configuration, and it is about 3 foot off the ground. I'm running about 20 watts, because you never trust the meter. You know, meters lie all the time. Got to do real-world stuff like this in order to verify what's going on. And all I'm doing right now is listening. So this is what stations I can hear based on their FT8 signals that they're transmitting. So you can see I'm getting a little bit into Maryland to the east. I'm getting down as far south as lower Tennessee, Oklahoma area. I'm getting up into Winnipeg, Canada. And I'm not getting a whole lot of reception from whatever happens to be going on in the west. Not a lot of reception on this antenna. This is kind of the design benefit of running an antenna in the Nevis format. Having it close to the ground makes signals that are in closer to you easier to receive, and it makes your signal go almost straight up and almost straight down instead of going outward to the horizon, bouncing off the horizon and coming down farther away off in the distance. It just kind of goes up and right back down. So this is the difference, what we're taught to believe with Nevis, but you can see that close in, up and down isn't as close as you might think. I mean, I'm getting all the way out to the East Coast from the upper Midwest here. Let's see what transmit looks like on this antenna. All right, from a transmit perspective, I am down into southern Alabama. I am up into West New York, upstate New York area here. I don't have a whole lot going on in the mid-Atlantic, lower Atlantic region. I've still got nothing out in the west, nothing down to the south, and nothing really up north. So this is what Nevis looks like on an end-fed half wave on transmit. This is 40 meters, and again, I'm about 3 foot off the ground. Up next, we have an inverted V design. The inverted V, I switched from east-west to north-south. The inverted V, the feed point is about 3 foot off the ground. The center point, the highest point of the antenna, is 25 to 30 foot up in the air, depending on the breeze. And then the low point on the far end, the end of the antenna, also about 3 foot off the ground. So whatever makes that 65-foot piece of wire fit in that orientation is what I did for the purposes of this experiment. So again, we're back to listen only. You can see that I've got still out to Maryland. I'm now out to Long Island. In terms of hearing what's going on, I'm in Virginia. I'm listening in Virginia. I'm listening a little bit lower, maybe northern Georgia, southern Tennessee. Hard to tell there. And we're getting a lot of Ohio and Indiana area, and a little bit more to the west, but not enough to really brag about. Let's look at what transmit looks like on the inverted V design. And I'm getting a lot of transmit here in that Ohio, Indiana area. I'm getting down into Mississippi area, lighten up the whole East Coast. I got a little bit of West Coast going on. Not a whole lot. So differences between the inverted V on TX and the Nevis on TX. I'd say the inverted V is doing a lot better. But it really depends on what your goals are for the day. So kind of figure out what your logistics are. So antenna design number 3, antenna setup number 3 is a sloper configuration. So we're using that same 25 to 30 foot anchor point up in the tree, and then we've got however far out that stretches to reach about a 3 foot off the ground feed point where the coax meets the end of the antenna and the transformer. Again, this is just plain listening, and I'm still getting kind of that same curve out to the east. I'm lighting up a lot of the East Coast. I'm hearing a lot of the East Coast. I'm into Toronto area, lower east side of Canada area. Getting a little bit more out west. I'm getting a little farther out west than I was before, maybe another state or two over to the west, but I'm still doing really good in this area over here, and not very good up into the. So this is the receive side of things. Let's light this thing up and see what happens when we start transmitting. On transmit, this looks a lot like the inverted V. This could be chalked straight up to, this was 2 hours later in the day, and therefore propagation has changed a bit. It could be warmer, colder temperatures, changing the atmosphere in the area. It could be any number of things. So this is the transmit on the sloper versus the transmit on the inverted V. So on the sloper, I'm getting kind of a good, healthy combination of in close and out far. And on the inverted V, I'm missing everything that's in close. I missed the entire state of Wisconsin on transmit. But the antenna pattern, the radiation pattern looks the same, except I'm missing that internal spot. This is the inverted V on transmit, and this is the sloper on transmit. So you can see I'm getting in close and far on sloper. So we'll go back to the very beginning. End-fed half wave is stuff that's relatively in close. Inverted V is stuff that's relatively farther out. And then sloper looks like it's a combination of the two patterns put together. So now for comparison's sake, I'm going to use a different antenna. This is a vertical antenna. This is a quarter wave, not a half wave. This is set up maybe 75 to 100 feet away in the yard and different coax. So here's the receive pattern. This looks a lot like the inverted V receive pattern, where I'm getting nothing in close and not too far out in terms of receive. And then we look at the transmit pattern for the vertical. Again, this is the vertical on 20 watts to make a fair comparison to the end-fed half wave on 20 watts. And this looks a lot like the inverted V configuration on transmit. So there's your inverted V on transmit. There's your vertical on transmit. They look fairly similar. I would say that the differences are the vertical's got some more fill-in in this area and a little bit more out to the west than the inverted V does. but there's definitely a difference there. Now let's look at transmit on the vertical and see what that looks like. So again, transmit on the vertical, I'm going to say this looks a lot like the inverted V pattern. Here's the inverted V pattern. Here's the vertical pattern. So let's switch back and forth between those a little bit. This is inverted V. This is vertical. V again. Vertical again. You can kind of see that the vertical is a little fuller in the areas where it's transmitting, but the pattern looks fairly close to being the same. And again, this would have been 4 to 5 hours later in the day, so it could just be, atmospheric conditions more than anything else. And then just for grins, because the vertical can handle more power, I went up and hit 100 watts on this vertical. And here you can see that we've really filled out this area over here where we have been transmitting to all along, but now we've also got some more propagation out to the western side here. So that's pretty interesting to see. So this is the vertical at 20 watts. This is the vertical at 100 watts. And these were run pretty close back to back with each other. Probably 15 minutes between transmitting at 20 and then again transmitting at 100. So real quick comparison between the Nevis style on 20 watts, the inverted V on 20 watts, the sloper on 20 watts, and the vertical on 20 watts. So you can see that the antenna pattern is largely sweeping out to the southeast of my location. Sorry, I'm looking at it backwards on the screen here. Largely to the southeast of my location, not a whole lot to the west, not a whole lot to the north. It doesn't really matter what antenna I'm on. That's an interesting thing to see. I would like to get more western propagation. Not really 100% sure how to go about doing that or why I'm not getting it. What are the conditions that are causing that to happen in my area? I don't really think there's any specific reason why I shouldn't be able to. I'm just not able to. I mean, I can make contacts worldwide, but I can't make reliable contacts to the west like I can clearly make reliable contacts to the east here. It's doable. I could probably set up a schedule and we could probably have a conversation if you were in the west, no problem. But if we were just hunting and pouncing looking for contacts, the chances are I wouldn't hear you if you're in the west because I'm too busy focused on the plethora of contacts out in the east. How is your antenna set up? How does your configuration look? What are your takeaways from this video? I'd like to hear your feedback in the comments down below and kind of have a friendly discussion as to what's going on here. This was a moment in time. There are many, many ways to make these kinds of antenna comparisons, and all of them have their flaws and all of them have their high points. This really is just my QTH and how my radiation patterns look using my radios and my equipment on this very specific day. And if you've ever been on HF, you know that HF conditions vary day by day and hour by hour within the same day. So this was a kind of a fun exercise. My takeaway from this is if I'm going out to do like a portable activation and I just want to do something real quick, that Nevis antenna is super easy to set up. I can just string it between 2 picnic tables and I can make contacts halfway across the continent here. No problem whatsoever. I have absolute confidence in this. I've actually done this from 3 different states. I've done it from Wisconsin, I've done it from Indiana, and I've done it from Tennessee. Results are fantastic. From Indiana, we got to California. So I'm calling that a win if I'm going out and trying to do a park activation, and I'm trying to get it done quick and easy. It would take me less time to set up a Nevis-style antenna than it would to fail at throwing a rope into a tree 3 or 4 times and finally get it right the 5th time. So not a big deal. If I was out there longer, I would set up a different antenna because I would want to get more of that propagation. I'd probably choose the sloper because it looked the best. And if I was out there for a very long time, I would set up a vertical antenna. Like say if I was out for a weekend camping, I'd set up a vertical. I'd go for more DX because you get more DX off of a vertical because of that low takeoff angle. So looking forward to hearing your comments. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks for being awesome.
That was an interesting show, and I don't know. I guess there were some surprises that came out of that. I think in just looking at the patterns of the different antennas that he tried and leaving the vertical out of the equation for a second, I think his most effective antenna was the sloper.
Well, there was a couple of things that I detected there that I'm not sure that would let you get a decent comparison. the fact that he was talking about that NVIS only being 3 feet off the ground. Normally, when you run an NVIS, you're supposed to be, I think it's at 18 feet. The apex is supposed to be at 18 feet.
Was the whole antenna only at 3? Or
I
was
thought
that
he
just
said it
one
was
end?
all at 3.
Okay, that's a problem. Well, that's an NVIS antenna then.
And that, therefore, you know, on an antenna like that, I've used NVIS before at field day, and we've hit as far away as Colorado. We've heard,
Wow.
we heard California, but we couldn't get there on it. But we hit Colorado on it. We hit pretty much all the states in between there, and we did really well in like Maine, New Hampshire, and all that. We did all right with that.
It's a cloud warmer. Basically, you're picking a regional pattern out.
That's exactly right. But I don't know that the way he was comparing that. I'm not sure.
Well, then he had his inverted V. I was not all that impressed with the inverted V, but that sloper, he seemed to get further out west with the sloper, and he seemed to do better regionally with the sloper. I did find it interesting that the vertical performed at least as well, really, as his wires. I, for all intents and purposes, I was a little bit surprised at how well the vertical did.
Yeah, that actually kind of surprised me too. I think the receive wise, you're always going to do, at least in my opinion, you're always going to do a little bit better horizontally, just because of the noise factors.
The noise level, right, of course, because most of your QRM, as in man-made, is vertical.
Yep.
That's not horizontal noise. And now your QRN, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, that's exactly
Mother
right.
Nature. You're stuck with that. So if somebody comes to you and they're brand new and this is their first HF radio and they just got their general and they're ready to get on the air, what advice are you going to give them as far as their first antenna is concerned?
Put up more than one antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Put a vertical and a horizontal up.
And what type of horizontal wire would you tell them?
I'd go with something like I've got with the. I'm pretty happy with that Alpha Delta that I got. It's a multi-band wire. It's actually got loading coils on it. I think it does from 80 down to 80 to 10. And for what it is, you know, it really doesn't, configuration-wise, it doesn't matter that terribly much. Going east to west is kind of a necessity. But for the most part, you can L-shape it or whatever you want to do with it. And I'm running almost an L on mine.
Okay.
But that's pretty much what I would do. Is I'd tell them, if you can afford it, put up 2 antennas. Put up like a 5BT, 6BT, 6-band vertical, and do a horizontal. If you don't have one, you're gonna want it. If you've got a horizontal, you're gonna want a vertical, because some things you just can't hear on the horizontal mode. If you want to talk anything locally, you're better off being vertical anyway, for the most part. That's why 10 meters does what it does. People run 10 meters, usually run vertical, but there are hams like myself that have a 10-meter horizontal too. And sometimes I can hear something, especially if somebody's horizontally polarized, I can hear them better on 10 meters than I can losing 30 dB between a horizontal and vertical plane. Yes, here.
Experiment. What works one day may not work the next day. So,
and that's
what
exactly
about
right.
a guy that is a traditionalist and he says to you, really, he says there's no antenna except for a dipole. You've got to go with a dipole. Is that good advice?
You'd be happy with it for the most part. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't know that you can ever go wrong with a dipole. Good old. I mean, don't we compare I compare my verticals to how they would do if they were against a dipole.
Well, your vertical probably is a dipole. You don't know it.
Well, it is of one.
But-
It is in one fashion. Like for instance, the DX Commander vertical, that is a vertical wire, and so basically you have your one element of your dipole going up. Your other element, of course, are your grounding radials. That's your offset to your antenna, and that's the other leg of the dipole. So if you want to compare it to a dipole, I guess you can, because basically electrically it's the same thing.
And if you look on the inside of a fiberglass antenna, even the channel,
Yes,
or even
the
the Station
fiberglass
Masters,
antenna we were talking about.
even if you go to a Station Master, which is one of the better older antennas that they ever made, what's on the inside of that and can be rebuilt, but you have to pull the fiberglass shield off of it? It's a wire.
The wire.
It's a 24, 26, something like that foot wire. And you take it apart and you clean it up, and you or you can replace it or whatever, and you put it back together and you put the fiberglass shield back over it and you put it up for another 20 years.
So basically it's a vertical wire.
It's a vertical wire, exactly.
Yeah.
Most
You can hang-
antennas are just that. They're vertical wires. There's nothing else they can't be.
That's interesting. Or you see the fiberglass antennas. I noticed this down at Amvention this year. There were a number of these guys selling these POTA antennas, and if you look real close at them, you can tell what they are. They're a big, tall fiberglass rod, and then what they do is they take the wire and they go around like a piggy tail. They go around
Yep.
the fiberglass, and then they heat shrink plastic over the top of it somehow. I don't know how that process works. Maybe they just dip the thing in plastic. I don't know. But basically, that's a
That's all it is.
vertical
It's a
wire.
wire.
The same thing. Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
You could do that yourself, couldn't you, Pat?
Wow. I actually had a 102 2-inch fiberglass whip when I was in 11 meters. I could talk anywhere on that thing. And it just depends on the terrain you're on, and whatever you've got to run. And the thing with that band, it was about a third of the wattage that I'm able to use now, or that I use now on a regular basis. You're talking 15 watts as opposed to 100. So
That's good stuff. This has been an instructive program tonight. The different types of wire antennas, how they perform, and also, of course, how to read the SFI and the A index and the K index to figure out what propagation is going to be like. If you're going out on the bands tonight, right now is the SKS, the slow speed Saunter is on tonight from SKCC. It started at 8 o'clock Eastern time, which is right now, and will continue for 2 hours. Excuse me, I said the Saunter, and that's not true. Tonight is the Sprint. It's only 2 hours, and you try to reach as many other operators as you can in that 2 hours of time on the band. So when we finish up here in a second, Pat, I'm going to be heading over to 20 meters. I'll be down somewhere between 7.030 and 7.060, and I will be trying to hunt down some other SKCC guys with my straight key and see if I can hunt, pounce, and bag some tonight. So if you're a CW operator, get out there on the bands tonight and have some fun. That fella sitting over in the chair is N80QP, and he is Mr. Pat Morrow, our Elmer. I'm Jerry, KG8RRY, and I want to thank you, the most important part of the show, for being here. If you guys weren't here, we wouldn't be here, and that's how that goes. So join us again next Tuesday night right here on the Crooked River Radio Network at 7 o'clock for The World According to Elmer. Pat, anything else before we split?
That frequency you gave was 40 meters. Are you going to be on 40 or 20?
I'll go to 40. I enjoy 40. That's my favorite. I can't tell you the last time I was on 80. I found that spelling pneumonia and colonoscopy in Morse code just was, it took too long, and I just don't have the patience for it anymore. So I stay on 40 now, Pat.
All right, we'll catch you on
Isn't that
40
terrible? I'm sorry, guys. I apologize in advance for what I just said. So don't send letters. Don't send emails.
Have a great week. They're going to really love my
Have fun
shirt.
on the band,
I
guys.
seen you looking at this shirt a couple of times. Yes, it does say Timmy Middle Finger.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I wasn't
I
going to
didn't wear
point
it on
that out,
purpose.
Pat, but since you chose to go ahead and point that out,
That was
we'll let that go because the FCC may be watching.
that was a Freudian slip.
Yes.
All right.
There you go.
Y'all have a great week. We'll see you next week.
73, guys.
7-3 y'all.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. See you again soon.